it, we will say, good day to you all this day of your time. We thank you once again for allowing us the opportunity to create and co-create this transmission with you this day of your time. We would like to begin this transmission by titling it A Game of Chess. Now, we have talked about the idea of different levels of consciousness that are relevant for your experience in physical reality, beginning with the idea of the oversoul, which has extensions that would create individuated souls, or spirits if you wish, which then, in order to experience physical reality, creates a specific extension of itself, a specific aspect of itself, a specific presentation of itself, called the higher mind, that will become half, in a sense, of the person that will experience the idea of physical reality. The higher mind, in thus then choosing particular themes to experience, particular challenges to transform in that physical reality, in creating that so-called destiny for the physical mind to follow, that hallway, that pathway that the physical mind will take, even though the physical mind will have its own free will as to how to walk that path, the higher mind's choosing, in a sense, the soul's choosing through the higher mind of the particular experience it wishes to have, creates the kind of path or destiny that the physical mind will experience. In order for the physical mind to experience that path, that theme of exploration, the higher mind will then, by using what is called the template level reality, the blueprint level that is used to create the outlines of the physical reality experience, if you wish, the draft of the experience. It uses that template level to create the playing field that the physical mind will play in. And from there creates and steps part of itself down into the vibration of the collective mind, which contains the collective agreements of the physical reality that is being experienced by the physical mind, and then the individual agreement level that determines the agreement that the individual has with the collective in playing out its scenario, and thus then down into the components of the physical mind itself, the belief systems, the emotions, the thoughts, that together create the behaviors that are representative of the physical persona, the physical personality, that becomes the other half of the whole person, being constructed of the physical mind and the higher mind, with all these intervening layers creating the playing field and the individual and collective agreements that the physical mind will use to explore the theme that the higher mind has chosen. Now, knowing that that is the basic structure, from oversoul to individual soul to higher mind to template level reality to collective agreement to individual agreement and down into the physical personality levels, you will find that there is an analogy that can be made by using the game of chess, or perhaps many different kinds of games, but for the purposes of this communication, chess may be the most apt analogy, and we will use that. You can, in a sense, look at, thus then, from this analogy of chess, that the oversoul is the level of your consciousness that plays many different games at once. Not only a multitude of chess games, but a multitude of other kinds of games as well. Each game being representative of a life experience, an incarnation, a projection of the oversoul into some sort of reality where it is playing out some sort of theme and exploratory path. So the oversoul plays a multitude of games all at once. But each of those multitudes, each of those individuated games is thus then, shall we say, the purview, the domain of an individual aspect of the oversoul, the individualized soul that is focused on one idea, one particular style of game. In this case, by our analogy, a game of chess. Now, the higher mind, thus then, is created to be, in a sense, the game player, to strategize, to understand the playing field, to have the broad view, as it were, of the game. And thus then, in continuing this analogy, the higher mind uses the template level reality, the blueprint level, to create the game board. What you are familiar with, in a sense, again, by analogy, as the chess board, with its 64 squares of alternating color. Thus, once laying out the board, it thus then allows itself to project into the level of the collective agreement. The level of the collective agreement consciousness thus then defines the rules in general of the game, of the overall game. So once the template level has been used to create the playing board, the collective is used to create the idea of what rules are germane for the playing of this game. What reality game are we playing here? What is appropriate and relevant for this particular game we are going to experience, and what is not relevant for that particular game? That is decided upon in the collective agreement consciousness. Such examples, such simplistic examples of the collective agreement rules for this game in your physical reality are such things as, generally speaking, most of you will experience the concept you call gravity. You will experience the concept you call space and time. As a physical being, you will experience the concept of needing and requiring the idea of sleep, the idea of food, the idea of water, and so on and so forth, in order to perpetuate your ability to continue to play the game. Now, sometimes those rules can be bent a little bit, but generally speaking, the overall collective agreement rules will be abided by most people playing this game, because it allows you the opportunity to simply put something on automatic, to put the rules on automatic, so you don't have to think about them constantly and constantly consciously create them in order to play the game. This gives you the opportunity to actually simply focus on playing the game instead of constantly wondering exactly what the parameters are, what the rules are. So once you learn the rules, once you instill the rules within you in an automatic sort of second nature way, then you can simply be on about learning to play the game better and better, more precisely, more clearly. Now, once the collective rules of the game have been created in the collective mind level of consciousness, it is time to define the idea of exactly what piece you are going to be, and thus then in the individual agreements, the individual agreement level, you will create the rules for that piece. How does that piece move? What is its position on the board? How does it relate to the other pieces? This thus then is created for the individual on that level of the why and wherefore, the concept of what you are as a playing piece, what skills, talents, abilities that you have to give to the game. Your ability to view your relationship to other playing pieces is created in this individual agreement level as it relates to the collective agreement, so that you will understand exactly how you fit in the game, where you belong in the game, how it is you will move in the game, so that you can take full advantage. By learning your style of movement, take full advantage of the strategy of the piece that you are being, and make sure that your movements are impactful and effective in creating the experience of the game that has been, in that sense, laid out for you by the higher mind and the board and the collective rules. Again, not that the piece doesn't have individual will, but it's going to use its individual will to best express, best exemplify the capabilities it has been designed to have as the individual playing piece. And so it will know its own rules, who it is, what it is, its own identity. And that's why it's very important to get in touch with the idea of, in a very clear way, who and what each individual is, to know their identity, to know what they are all about, to know what path they are on. Thus, then, clearly, knowing that will allow each individual piece to interact with every other individual piece in a way that allows the game to be played in the most fun way, in the most challenging way, in the most strategic way, in the most impactful way, in the most expanding way, in the most satisfying way. Because it is about the relationship of all the pieces to each other that allow the game to be what it is, and allows for different opportunities for each piece to play different strategies in every single game that it plays within the game, every single opportunity that it acts on, every single path of excitement that it follows, every single door that it walks through. Thus, then, again, once this has been determined of what the game board is, what the general rules are, what the individual rules are for the piece, now the physical personality is created, which is analogous to the actual piece itself. Thus, you find that the qualities of the physical playing piece, the physical qualities, the shape, and so on and so forth, the material it is made out of, the size, and so on, correspond in the idea to the physical personality and the physical body. And thus those qualities are also, to some degree, part and parcel of the game. And thus, by knowing the shape can be handled properly. It can be moved properly, in the proper way, smoothly throughout the game. It can be moved with finesse. And in the idea of the beliefs and the emotions, the thought patterns that together form the physical personality, the behavior of that piece, thus then is the complete chess game revealed. And then, once all those components are in place, you can play the game in the most efficient way possible. Once you have really learned the rules, taken them to heart, once you know who you are, taken that to heart, once you understand the piece that you have become, that you have extended yourself as into the physical reality game, once you understand the layout of the board and all these things and your relationship to the other pieces, then you can play the game in a very efficient, very fun way, very expanding way. And you can learn from every move you make and from every response you get how to play the game better and better and better, more efficiently, more smoothly, more broadly. Now, there are, of course, many different kinds of chess, in a sense, in many different parallel realities. Even in your own parallel reality, not only do you have the idea of two-dimensional chess on a flat board, but many people on your planet actually play three-dimensional chess on a multitude of levels. There are even parallel realities, and yours will be one of them eventually, that has learned to play the idea of fourth-dimensional chess, where time is actually a factor in the game as well, in terms of exactly not only where a piece winds up, but exactly when it winds up in that position, being also important to the playing of the game. So you are learning more and more levels on which to play this game of chess, more and more levels on which to play the game of life, to play your life out, incorporating a broader understanding and a higher capability of seeing different moves before you make them. In a sense, when you talk about the idea of chess masters, looking ahead, 5 moves ahead, 7 moves ahead, 10 moves ahead, and understanding for both players what those moves could all be, what the probabilities are, all the possible combinations of what moves could be made ahead of moves that have been made. This is really nothing more than extending your senses into all the different parallel reality versions of that game, being capable of seeing them overlap in such a manner as to guide yourself through the parallel reality game stream that represents the one in which your player, so to speak, wins the game. This takes practice, of course, takes the ability to open up to the idea of being able to perceive parallel realities in a variety of ways. And again, this is analogous to some of what you are doing in your physical reality now by becoming, first of all, aware that there are, of course, such things as parallel realities, parallel games going on that perhaps other versions of you are playing, and thus knowing that since everything exists in the now, you have the ability to cross-connect to many of these other incarnations and become aware of the interconnected energy and information that can be downloaded from these other games going on in ways that, by observing the moves in some of these parallel reality chess games and games of life, you can apply some of these moves to your own game and thus shift yourself to one of those parallel realities, become the player, become the focus of the player in that parallel reality that is more and more indicative, more and more representative, if you will, of the game that you prefer to play. Now, many people on your planet become enamored, become fixated and focused on the idea of knowing about all these other parallel incarnations, parallel realities. And the idea is that it's all well and good to know about them, but to a certain point. Because once you allow yourself to understand how to download that information in the most efficient and relevant way, you will realize that you really only need a little bit of information here and a little bit of information there, just exactly when you need it to help you with the next move that you're going to make on the game board. You don't really need all the information at once. You don't really necessarily need to connect to every single parallel reality version of the game at once, or even ever. The idea would be that if you are playing one game of chess and you have developed some capability to look several moves ahead, in other words, to examine a number of parallel reality versions of the game all at once, and you have decided on what course to shift to that is representative of the game you prefer to play, that's all well and good. But if you take it a little bit too far for its own sake, just for the sake of being aware of other versions of the game that may not necessarily be relevant to the game that you really truly need to play, that you really truly prefer to play, then you will simply clutter up the game board to such an extent that you won't have any capability of making any moves at all. So the idea is to keep it simple, keep it streamlined, keep it efficient, and only allow yourself to know that what is necessary is all you really need to know at any given moment, even as you extend your senses into a variety of parallel games. Allow the synchronicity in your life, allow the way in which the game unfolds naturally to show you, to demonstrate to you exactly how many moves ahead you really need to see, how many different versions of the game you really need to be aware of at any given moment. Let it fall into place automatically, naturally, in such a manner as to be representative and reflective of the game that is truly your game. Because when you are truly playing your game, then you will find that the outcome of that game will always be satisfactory for you, regardless of who else you may be playing with. Because as these things go, even though different people may be playing on the same game board and each playing their own game, you're not really playing against each other. You are playing your own game, and in some senses with each other, but each of you actually has the capacity to win your own game at the same time. So let the synchronicity simply show you the moves that need to be made that are truly representative of your game. Don't worry about what someone else's game is all about, because those moves are only relevant for their game and not yours. And let the game unfold in the most natural way possible. Now, again, many people may get fixated on the idea of looking at other games and other incarnations and want to know all about all of them all at once. But again, it would be like playing a game of chess and somebody comes along and says, well, here's another set of pieces, let me put them on the board too. And here's another set of pieces, let me put them on the board too. Pretty soon you'll not be able to make a move because all the squares will be filled with pieces and there'll be nowhere to go. And even more so, recognize that your oversoul and all these different incarnational games being played are not only just games of chess. Some of them are games of checkers, cards, and other types of game. And so To ask for more information than you need would again be like someone not only coming along and placing 3 sets of chess pieces on the board, but also dumping a lot of checkers on the board, dumping a bunch of cards on the board, and saying, now go ahead and play. You wouldn't know where to begin. It would just be a mess, a pile on top of the board. In fact, you wouldn't even be able to see the board anymore. So keep it simple, keep it streamlined. Play just the number of moves ahead that are really germane for you. Allow yourself to extend your senses by all means into the parallel realities that will allow you to download whatever information will give you the opportunity to decide which game, which parallel stream of games you really wish to shift to. But don't extend yourself too far. Stay in the present with the game and allow whatever information comes to you to be what information you need at that moment. And play it well. Play well with the information you have. Play well as the piece you already are. Learn that. Master that piece. And you will have mastered the entire game. Because as many of you who play chess know, it doesn't really matter what piece you may be playing. Be it the king and the queen, or the rook and the bishop and the knight and all the pawns. You know that even a pawn can win the whole game with the right strategic move. So it doesn't matter what piece you are playing. If you play it well and master that piece, and look at the whole picture of the game and see how that piece fits in whatever game is representative of your relevant path, you will know that any piece that you happen to be is capable of winning the game. And you don't necessarily have to strive to be anything more than you are. Now, conversely, in the idea that a pawn can actually win a game, you can understand holographically that each piece actually has the capability to some extent to enclose and contain and represent the abilities of all the other pieces, at least where it counts, in terms of the idea of whatever the final configuration is of that particular game you are playing within the overall game. So never discount the piece, never think less of a pawn. A pawn can also function like a king in the right circumstances of the game. Allow yourself to see the whole picture. Using this idea, this chess analogy, for all these different levels of consciousness, in creating the player in the higher mind, the game board in the template level reality, the collective rules of the game in the collective consciousness agreements, the individual rules of the piece in the individual agreements relevant to the collective consciousness, and in understanding the physical piece itself that you have chosen to be, and mastering the play of that piece, then you can play game after game after game with each and every new opportunity that comes up. You can look at it as a whole game, the game of your entire life, and you can look at it as games within the game, in different scenarios, different moments, mini games within the overall game. And you can divide that up however you wish, to whatever extent you wish. In any different scenario, in every different circumstance, you can create a mini game of chess for yourself and play it out by mastering the piece that you are in that game. And in essence, you can actually change the pieces that you are from game to game, even though you might have an overall piece for your entire life. You have that degree of flexibility in your free will, in your creative being. You can actually be many different pieces in the mini games within the overall game, even though you might be one kind or two kinds of pieces for the entire game of your life. So be flexible in your imagination with this and use this analogy to your benefit in that way. One of the reasons we are now utilizing this particular analogy of all these different levels of consciousness is to give you an analogy you are somewhat familiar with, to anchor these different levels of consciousness, the oversoul, the individual soul / spirit, the higher mind, the template level reality, the collective consciousness, the individual agreements, and the physical persona. To anchor this chess game analogy to those concepts so that you can create a little bit more of a visual representation, a little bit more of a grounded, as you say, down-to-earth representation. And what would really be a good exercise to go along with this would to actually be to lay out a chessboard, to lay out the pieces, and even to play a game with someone. And in playing that game, really understand, really begin to feel all the different layers behind you, above you, that are creating this whole scenario. All the way up to the oversoul that is playing many games at once, to the individual soul that has chosen to play chess in this way, to the higher mind that has chosen to be the chess player, the strategist, to the actual template reality game board you see before you that is being created as your blueprint to play this game out as you play on the field of life, the board of life, to the idea of the general rules that you understand for playing the whole game, to the idea of the specific rules you understand for playing your particular pieces one at a time as you play the game and each of the rules that go with them, and to the physicalness of each piece, the size, the shape, the weight, the color, the material, how it feels in your hand when you move it, how it relates to the other pieces, not only your own, but also the other players. And to use this analogy when you are playing the game as an exercise, as a meditation, in a sense, to lock you in, to anchor you into these different levels of your consciousness, so that by doing so physically, by playing the actual physical game of chess, you will actually strengthen the bonds between all these different levels. You will start to equalize the frequencies, in a sense, or allow the frequency thresholds at each level to match more cleanly, more closely, to align more closely, so that there's greater communication up and down the line, from the oversoul all the way down through to the physical personality, and from the physical personality all the way back up to the oversoul. So that thus then, as you play this physical game of chess, literally, you are also strengthening your ability to see your position in the game of life, and strengthening your ability to use your talents and express yourself strategically, efficiently, in a relevant way, in relation to all other pieces in a way that works best for you and works best for all the other pieces as well, in playing out certain games. Use this analogy in this way, and you will begin to really see that you are capable of expanding your senses in a variety of ways. It may begin, as you play the game of chess, with an ability to start seeing more moves ahead, as you develop more of a skill at looking at a multitude of parallel reality probabilities all at once. But as you develop that, as you begin to master that ability, you will see that that will start to leak, because you know of the connections through the idea of the levels of consciousness. It will start to leak and rub off on those different levels, back up the line in such a way as to allow you the opportunity to experience the same kind of foresight, the same kind of expanded view that the higher mind has in playing this game, in your life, in all your endeavors. Looking moves ahead, seeing all the juxtapositions and all the different relationships, and what the different ideas and outcomes and results can be from all those different probabilities, so that it can act as a guide for you and allow you to know specifically, more easily, what represents your preferred vibration, what does not, so that you can truly begin to play the game of life in a very masterful, easy, effortless, joyful, creative, expansive way, even as you ponder each move, and allow yourself to remain in the present totally with that move, so that you're truly relishing all the different ideas of what that one move can do, of what that one piece is capable of. And as you do that, you will cherish yourself. You will appreciate yourself. You will understand what you truly are at your core. And you can let drop away all the things that are not relevant to the true game you are playing, so that you can recognize the difference between the game that you have truly chosen to play and all the other games that may be crowding in that don't really belong on this board at this time. Be they chess, be they checkers, be they cards, be they anything else. Allow yourself to begin to recognize, by using this analogy and by playing that game, what is germane and relevant just for that game, and what does not need to be on the board. You will simplify not only the game, you will simplify and speed up and accelerate your ability to go through the game that much more efficiently, that much more quickly, and get on to the next game, and the next, and the next, and the next within the overall game of your life. And this again will leak into your true life and allow you to operate more efficiently, more cleanly, in an accelerated way, knowing exactly what to do, when to do it, understanding the moves, understanding the consequences of those moves, understanding how everything is interconnected in that way as one game. You'll start to see, in a sense, with X-ray vision, the idea of the multitude of probable realities that are open and available to you to become different versions of yourself as you shift from parallel world to parallel world, from game to game to game. And the whole game will start to change, even as the mini-games change within it. And you can shift more radically, more drastically, more smoothly, more efficiently, more completely. So, we offer you this opportunity of using this analogy to allow it to be something that will help you align in a variety of ways, to focus you and yet expand you, seeing the big picture, all the probabilities, at the same time that you are understanding each individual move, to work in that holographic, coherent, and cohesive way in your life. Let it leak in. Now, if you decide that you wish another analogy, by all means allow your imagination to be your guide. You can start with the idea of checkers. You can start with the idea of cards. You can start with the idea of dominoes. You can start with the idea of Chinese checkers. You can start with the idea of Go. You can start with the idea of Mahjong, or any of your games. It doesn't really much matter. We have chosen the analogy of chess because of its precision and because of the ability of the different pieces to be strongly representative of many of the different traits that actually exist within some of the choices that you make. The different levels, the different classifications of ideas, of playing pieces, and what they are capable of doing, and how they are capable of moving, and how they are viewed in relation to the other pieces. Chess, in many ways, has many different kinds of complex, interactive probabilities. And we have chosen it for that reason because, in many ways, it is highly representative of the same degree of relevant complexities, shall we say, and richness of texture that exist in the choices that you give yourself in physical reality. And so it is a very workable analogy for that purpose, and has direct correlation and connection to many of the different levels that we have talked about in the idea of your consciousness that is relevant for how you create and experience your physical reality. But use what you wish. It's up to you. While at the same time, if you can learn to master chess using this analogy, it will be a little bit more of a refined and a little bit more of a precise way of connecting to some of those levels than checkers might be or cards might be. It's up to you, though, because you can use your imagination to find the richness and complexity that is required to make the analogous connections to the different levels of consciousness as it relates to the game that you have chosen. It is up to you. But the higher mind is the game player. The physical mind is the playing piece. But that doesn't mean in the negative context that you are the higher mind's pawn, except in the idea we have already shared with you that a pawn can also contain the power of a king. And it is up to you to allow yourself to know that that power is there, and to choose the succession of parallel reality games, whatever piece you choose to be, that allows you to find that ability to be at exactly the right position, the right place, the right time, to be played in the correct way, to demonstrate that any piece on the board can win the game. Find that power. Be that piece. Master that game. And play. Play freely. Expand your ability to play, to see more than one game at once, and to choose which you prefer. As we thus then proceed later in our live interactions with you, keep this analogy in mind. Whatever dialogues, whatever questions and answers we discuss, keep this analogy in mind. Allow yourself to apply this concept to the questions you may have or the things you may wish to share, so as to bring clarity and to bring connection to those different levels of consciousness in these dialogues to help propel you forward and expand your senses and give you more of an ability, more of a skill to become a chess master and understand all the rules of the game very clearly within yourself, so that you will know what game you are playing and what game you truly prefer to play. And you will learn the difference. We will extend to you at this time our deepest appreciation for allowing us to share this concept with you. More of this concept will come out in the dialogues we will have in the live interaction. But for now, we wish to aid and assist you by letting this concept sink in, by imagining now, if you will, for a moment, this chessboard with its 64 alternating squares, and imagine, if you will, the playing pieces on that board, and understand that these playing pieces are made out of your energy. They are you. And allow yourself to examine from both sides all the playing pieces facing each other, the white and the black, whatever the opposite color may be. Start looking at both sides of the game, because only by understanding the other side as well will you be able to play your best game. You cannot really win by playing against the other side. But you will win when you learn how to play in alignment with the moves that the other side is making, in such a way, like what you call a martial art, that you match that energy, match that movement, match that frequency so precisely, so perfectly, so masterfully, that it requires hardly any effort at all to position your piece in the winning position. It's really learning about who the other player is and what all the other pieces are attempting to do that allows you to play your best game. Even though in some senses on Earth, as you do these things, it may seem to be adversarial, you may think of the other player as an opponent, but they are not. They're another aspect of you. And the pieces that are facing you, coming toward you, coming your way across the board from the other side, in many ways are your pieces too. Polarity is also expressed in this game. And it is very, very wise and very efficient way to play the game of chess to fully understand exactly all the probabilities of the other pieces coming toward you as well. For only understanding the polarity, only fully understanding the potential of all the pieces on the other side, their perspective, their point of view, that they also bring to the game, that both of you, in a sense, can win. And this is another type of chess altogether. A fifth-dimensional type of chess, where every player actually wins simultaneously. There is a way to actually play the game that way, with that outcome. And we will get into that another time. But keep that in mind. For it's a total game, and all the pieces are reflections. And you are simply playing yourself. We thank you for allowing us to share this idea with you. And we will continue this analogy to whatever degree is appropriate and relevant in our exchanges upcoming in this transmission, this day of your time. You may thus then enjoy a short break, and we will connect with you in what you call live fashion in moments.